All right, hello there everyone. Today's lecture is going to help you actually complete page 7 in your World War II Unit 10 interactive notebook. So if we're looking at page 7, so we'll pull it up right here, you'll see that there are several different either key terms or events on the left-hand side. Throughout the lecture, you might want to pause the lecture because as I go, it will go in order in the lecture, and then you'll actually take these boxes and slide them around until you actually match up with the correct answer. So, for example, the Nazi-Soviet Non-Aggression Pact is not the Prime Minister of Great Britain who rallied the British to fight. So, what you might do is move this guy out of the way. Then, whenever I discuss the Nazi-Soviet Pact, figure out which of these, matches up with it, then drag it and drop it up here to that spot, Then you'll go through and look at Germany invades Poland, So what does that cause? What is the result? You'll have a box that you'll move into that blank. So as we go, you'll be able to go through and complete these and get them in the right order. Additionally, when you are completely done, take a look at the images over here on the left. And you'll notice that in the lecture, I've used most of these images to go with a couple of these things. So for example, there is going to be one of these that matches with the Nazi-Soviet Non-Aggression Pact. You'll drag that over to its location. Another one will describe Blitzkrieg. Another one will describe France surrendering. One of them will show an image of Winston Churchill. One of them will show an image of the London Blitz. And one of them will show a person or something from the war in North Africa. At the bottom, it says, at this point in World War II, which side is gaining the most land and victories? So throughout the lecture, you'll figure out, are the Allies winning at this point, or are the Axis winning at this point? And then you'll simply highlight one or the other. Go up to your highlight tool right here. Click on highlight, and it will highlight whichever answer you believe is correct. So you'll either highlight Axis or Allies. Once you're done with that, you'll take a screenshot of this slide and you'll complete it in Google Classroom. Go ahead and attach it for your assignment. All right, so without any other talking, let's get going. We talked already about Germany being aggressive and how the League of Nations and all of these other European countries, of course, even the United States, who's not a member of the League of Nations, they are using the policy of appeasement, which is giving in to their demands in order to just keep the peace. But as you guys know, Hitler is not going to give in to demands, and instead he is going to continue to plow through the Treaty of Versailles. He's going to violate it, and he knows that no one's going to do anything about it. That will come to a stop at some point when Europe realizes he's not going to stop, and so they actually are forced to do something. Before this gets going, a side note, Hitler and Stalin do not like each other. Stalin is communist, and Hitler hates communists. At the same time, both men are totalitarian dictators. Both men use terror to keep their citizens in line, and both men see each other as a threat. So Hitler decides to create a secret deal with Stalin. We call this the Nazi-Soviet Pact, or the Nazi-Soviet Non-Aggression Pact. Germany and Italy, of course, oppose communism, and they don't want it to spread into their area. So they would really like for Stalin and the Soviet Union to not invade or tangle with them because they don't want the threat of communism approaching Germany. Stalin also, though, did not really trust the allies, their allies, France and Great Britain. France and Great Britain were supposed to be allies with Stalin against, maybe some sort of action with Germany. But if you guys remember, in the Allied powers, which of these things does not fit, the Soviet Union really doesn't fit in with France and Great Britain, and then later the United States, because they are communist. So these secret negotiations are kind of seen as I'll take care of you, you take care of me type of thing, we'll leave each other alone. So this Nazi-Soviet Non-Aggression Pact, each side promises not to attack each other. This is kind of like a relief for both of them. They also agree that if fighting does break out, they will divide up the Eastern European frontier between the two of them, and that way, they will not actually come into conflict, Most historians would say that Hitler actually used this agreement to kind of lull Stalin into sort of a sleepy relationship with Germany, to make Stalin feel very secure, to make him feel less threatened, by the Germans. And yet, of course, okay, Hitler's intention the entire time is to probably violate this treaty at some point or this pact, and then Stalin will be caught on his heels. So over here you can see, right, here's Stalin, here's Hitler. They're agreeing, right, they have their hands around their back. They have their leg tied together showing, hey, this is an agreement. They are standing on the eastern frontier, which they have agreed to divide, and yet they're actually pointing guns at one another behind each other's back, right? This one says, I wonder how long the honeymoon will last, right? So how long is this agreement going to last? And so we'll see, okay, what happens, right? World War II will officially begin in 1939. Germany is going to invade Poland using blitzkrieg. Okay, when Germany invades Poland, 2 days later, Great Britain and France will declare war on Germany, and at that point, the Allied powers are created. Germany's invasion, though, is so fast, Great Britain and France don't really have time to mobilize or do anything to help Poland. Blitzkrieg is called lightning warfare. It's the use of planes, in this case, okay, Germany using their Luftwaffe. Their Luftwaffe is their air force. They're going to come in and they're going to bomb just over and over and over, cause havoc, right? Everybody is, it's chaotic. There's casualties, there's injuries, buildings that are unstable, right? And as people are coming out of the rubble trying to figure out what's going on, then they have fast-moving forces come in through tanks and, okay, actual like ground forces. They're going to sweep in really, really quick and easily, okay, accept the surrender of Poland, city by city by city, okay, using this, okay, form of warfare. And there was no way for the Polish military, even though they had pretty good numbers, there's no way for them to defend themselves. So Poland falls. Of course, Great Britain and France at this point are going to have to get going. Okay. However, by spring 1940, Germany had gone ahead and invaded Denmark and Norway, so northwestern Europe, in order to access the Atlantic and try to cut off, okay, supplies, take over, right, okay, that waterway there. They then are going to move into Belgium, and they're going to move into the Netherlands, and they're going to easily be able to take over these areas. Okay, finally, Great Britain and France are mobilized. They get over to, okay, France. They're actually fighting to defend France, and unfortunately, the Germans are going to really kind of trap the Allies and push them all the way back to the coast of France in, okay, an area around the city of Dunkirk, or the beaches of Dunkirk. Okay, so you have the German forces moving in. The French and the British forces have been backed up. They were between a rock and a hard spot, right? Well, on one side, they have the English Channel, so you have a great big body of water that you can't go into, right? And then on the other side, you have the Germans coming. So really their options are to surrender, or, okay, what ends up happening, if you're familiar with the movie Dunkirk, you end up with a rescue of these Allied soldiers. The British are going to send tons and tons of ships, like any ship that they can find, even like fishermen, okay, private owners of ships. They tell them, hey, go across the English Channel and pick up as many of these soldiers as possible in order to return them to safety in Great Britain. An estimated 300,000 Allied soldiers are actually going to be rescued from the beaches of Dunkirk, and they will be returned to Great Britain. Unfortunately, though, okay, at this point, the Italians are going to swoop in from the south, okay, the Germans are going to swoop in from the north, and they are going to surround Paris, and France will surrender in June of 1940. And here's a very famous image of Hitler standing in front of the Eiffel Tower, right? This actually describes Blitzkrieg, so if you get a chance, okay, take a look at that video. All right, then the only real place that they have to go is Britain. So Germany at this point has conquered almost all of Western Europe, all of Northwestern Europe. They've taken France out of the fight. The French government is actually going to flee, and many of their members are going to set up a government out of Great Britain, kind of like ruling over France from afar. But let's be real, France has surrendered. They've been taken over. There's a lot of resistance fighters against, okay, the Germans, but for the most part, Britain's the only one left. And so Great Britain, okay, is going to be what Germany puts their target on. Germany plans on invading, okay, Britain with Operation Sea Lion. However, okay, his plans are stalled and actually are foiled by Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill, this fella down here, my 1-year-old, looks strangely like Winston Churchill when he looks really grumpy and he gets his lip out and, you know, fat cheeks. So there you go, a little comparison for you. We like to call him Churchill every now and then. But Churchill is this guy who is like really fierce. He has this fighting spirit. He is bound and determined to not give in. The Battle of Britain is when Germans are going to send thousands of aircraft across the English Channel to try to, in a way, sort of use blitzkrieg, try to soften up Britain. prepare, for an invasion, destroy the Air Force so that so that Germany can actually invade by sea. However, this nifty new invention for Britain is going to foil these attempts, called radar. Additionally, the distance that the Luftwaffe had to fly in order to bomb Britain becomes an issue. And for the first time, if you're into aviation history, this is when you have a lot of dogfights. So the Battle of Britain, as much as they wish they could have destroyed the Royal Air Force and many of the naval bases, they are unable to do so. So Hitler is going to shift his target, unfortunately, to civilians. Right? So when you go to civilians, all right, the London Blitz, he is going to start to actually bomb the city of London. He bombs ports, he bombs cities, he's bombing civilians. He wants to terrorize the citizens and break their will to fight. He wants them to push hard on their government to surrender. This ends up being ineffective, and he actually starts in really around May of 1940, when all of a sudden they're just, all this, like, bombs are raining down on the city. People are fleeing, businesses are destroyed, people are dying. And it continues for almost a month, non-stop, and then just intermittently for about another year. But the British people never give in. The King and Queen of Britain actually never flee to their countryside area. They decide to take shelter with the citizens of London. Winston Churchill, again, also does not flee to the countryside where it's safer. He's going to stay in the city. And they really pull together and they rally and they continue to carry on life as usual. One of the more interesting aspects of this, here's some bomb shelters, for example. If you see, it says business as usual, right? So everything is like bombed, and yet the British are continuing to operate as normal. If you look over here, you'll actually see the subway system. I love this image. A photographer actually took the image of people hiding in the subway system during a bombing, and you can see today the juxtaposition of what the subway actually looks like today. So people found shelter under London. The British people are, it is evident they are not going to surrender. Hitler realizes this. He calls off the Blitz and realizes he will not be able to actually invade Britain. So at that point, he sets his sights on a different place, North Africa and the Balkans. Again, this is in an effort to take over resources. In North Africa, Germany is actually going to be led by Brigadier General Erwin Rommel, better known as the Desert Fox for being so sly. He is going to push the British back into Egypt, and Africa ends up being very strategically difficult for the Allies to do well in because Italy is right here. Germany and Erwin Rommel have really forced their hand, and so the Allies are kind of backed up into Egypt until later, Americans will show up, right? The war also will extend into the Balkans when Germany and the Italian forces are going to overrun that area. Greece and Yugoslavia end up being taken over. There are some heavy resistance areas, so this is a very famous photo. Again, the Nazi flag being raised over the Acropolis of Athens. Later, resistance fighters will actually remove this flag, sort of symbolically trying to fight back, but ultimately they never gain independence. Bulgaria and Hungary at this point will join the Axis powers, right? So the last thing to talk about is, what does Hitler do then? So he's pretty much taken over all of Europe. The Axis powers are in control of Northern Europe, Northwestern Europe, Western Europe, North Africa, the Balkans, right? He can't conquer Great Britain, so the next place to go is the Soviet Union. So he breaks the Non-Aggression Pact. This is called Operation Barbarossa, where 3 million troops are going to invade. He's going to use blitzkrieg. Stalin is on his heels. He's in shock. The Soviets, fortunately for Stalin, are going to hold firm, and fortunately for the Allies, are going to hold firm. The Germans also march into Russia, unprepared for the Russian winter. They are unable to really lay siege to the city of Leningrad. They are going to try to surround it and block it off. But again, they're not ready for the winter. So this is going to give Soviets time to rebuild, right? And hopefully at that point, the Soviets and the British will be able to come together, right, and take Germany out. But at this point, it looks like Germany, right, is definitely in the lead, right? So if we go back to our slide, go through, all of these were discussed. Move them to the correct spot, move these over, right, and then highlight, the correct answer. All right, guys, that's all for today.